Alrighty. Well, I might just start kicking off because I think all our participants are starting to load up in Zoom. Hi everyone. My name's Lynn and I'm one of the founders of the Assisterhood program and one part of the 1 in 4 of us that's behind the scenes here. Also on the team is Paulina. Paulina, do you want to give a little wave? Paulina is also going to be helping me moderate tonight and facilitating our discussion this evening. But before we get into sort of the logistics, I just wanted to say a welcome to this year's Assisterhood program for 2020 and our first live Q&A with all our mentors. So we made it. We've been really busily working hard behind the scenes to make this year's program bigger and better than before. We started in 2018 and when COVID-19 sort of became our new normal this year, we had no choice but to really adapt, and we're super chuffed that all of our mentors, all 21 of them, still wanted to play a big part of this program. So for us, that demonstrates how important this initiative is, especially today. So this initiative exists because we wanted to address the gender imbalance in leadership roles. For me, I'm a massive big believer in you can't be what you can't see. And I was really lucky in my first communications role to work in an agency that had a really strong representation of female leaders in the leadership team, as well as being led by a female director. Who's actually here as one of our mentors and has been a massive supporter of this program since its beginning. I knew I was really in the right place when I found myself thinking, I want to be the head of client service or the general manager. I could actually be her. So we figured out a way to facilitate exactly the same thing, well, kind of the same thing, and showcasing our senior female talent to really pave the way for the next generation coming through. We're super social. You would have seen all our content go out across Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn over the last few weeks. We would love to keep you guys going and continue that conversation there. So we encourage everyone to use the hashtag Assisterhood on your social posts. And finally, we just want to say that this response for this year has been overwhelming. So we were really wowed and continue to be wowed and be grateful every single day. We've had so many questions come through from you guys when you've RSVP'd. So we could go on all night really, I think, but we've only got a small window. So what we're going to do here is we're going to tackle a few themes that have emerged first. And then we'll do this for the first 45 minutes and then use the rest of the session to answer the questions from those of you who are here with us. After the session, we'll also post the recording as well and do our best to add a basic level of response for as many of the questions as we can and post them up on the Assisterhood website so you can rewatch this as many times as you like. All right, so a couple more things. Let's get started. You may have seen the little hype video that we sent out not too long ago. I'm going to attempt to play it, so bear with me as we attempt to do this for the first time. All right. Awesome. All right. So let's get to the juicy part of the evening. I want to say a massive welcome to all our amazing mentors we have here tonight. You'll get to see all their lovely faces very, very soon. But I'm going to run through them really, really quickly. So from representing from Publicists Worldwide, Simone Waugh, Vicky Lee, Susan Lyons, Alexandra Sunquist. Twiggy's not going to be able to make it tonight, but she sends her apologies. We've also got Karen Zippy Hayward from Prodigious, Megan Elliott from Zenith Media, Sarah Jane from ATech, Christine Gannon from Clemenger Brisbane, Sarah Kelly and Nicole Hartley from UQ's Business School, Georgia Ball from the Vivo Group, Jess and Carolyn from Growth Ops, Priscilla from the Together Society, the fabulous Claire Bartels, Kelly Brightwell from Suncorp Group, Kelly Newberry from IntelliHR, and Erin Core from Queensland Ballet. That was a real mouthful, but it was worth it because What an amazing lineup for you guys. It's my absolute pleasure now to hand over to Simone Waugh. She's the Managing Director from Publicis and my co-founder of the Assisterhood 3 years ago. Simone, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thanks, Lynn and Paulina. Firstly, I just want to say a thank you to you both for putting this together and putting it together as well in the last 3 weeks, because obviously we had to do a massive pivot once COVID-19 hit. And so I'm just really proud that of where we are today and that we've got 21 amazing mentors. It's our 3rd year. And, you know, it's just growing from strength to strength. And I think we're really starting to make an impact in the Queensland market. And it's just very exciting to be able to help like another 21 or mentor another 21 young up and coming rising stars this year in 2020. So what we thought we might do is we would run it as a panel. And so I'm going to ask various people on the mentor panel some key questions. And so you can take some notes, you can work out who that you really want to connect with and who you want to apply to be your mentor this year. And then also think about some questions, as Lynn mentioned, that you would like to ask, and we'll ask those towards the back end. So the first question that I've got is for Claire Bartels, and Claire is one of our most fabulous copywriters in Queensland. She's recently returned to Queensland after big stints in the US and Melbourne agencies. And my question for her is around having a mentor as you rise up through your career. I know that I had a really important mentor to me really early on in my career. It was someone, her name was Rochelle Don. She made such an impact on me because she just basically held the room every time she walked into it. She was only, I think, like 4'6". So there was nothing off her. She was tiny, but it was just the way that she spoke. She had a sense of humour. She was head of corporate communications for a big corporate, so in crisis all the time, but she just managed it all beautifully. And so she was really important to me as I was coming up through my career, and I'm still in touch with her today. I think it's really important to have mentors in your workplace, but also outside of your workplace as well, that you can bounce ideas off really independently. So Claire, did you have a mentor, and what impact did they have on your career, and why do you think mentoring is really important?
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for running this, you guys. I'm so excited. And this question is really kind of special to me. I think Lizzo says, like, if I'm shining, everybody gonna shine. And I just think that's kind of the role of mentors. Like, you have these women come into your life who are these shiny, bright, flaming stars, and everyone kind of around them is lit up by their energy. And Simone, like your amazing mentor, how she held that space and just kind of owned it. And that was exactly the experience that I had. And I feel so fortunate to this day. So I really had this, I've kind of only really had the pleasure of like one insanely amazing mentor. And it really is because I haven't sorted out. But I want everyone here to promise, and I'm going to join, that we're all going to keep looking out for mentors beyond this mentorship program, like I am going to, because it is so important. And these people really friggin' fast track your career. Like, that's what happens. It's like getting on a moving escalator. Like, you step on and all of a sudden you've got someone kind of in your ear, holding your hand, helping you guide the way. And it's just like such a gift. So to set the scene, I was in the States. I'd been working at a big kind of network agency. It was 15 dudes in the creative team and me. And I was working on like big brand projects, but just kind of the small little projects that would, that I would pick up and loved. But I got headhunted by this agency called Peterson Miller Hooks. And the person that did it was this lady called Courtney Vincent. And she has like ombre, like blonde to red hair, or red to blonde hair, and has like the sexiest creative job shooting in LA and New York for retail brands. And I was just so excited. So Swoonsville, then so Court really invited me to lift my game in my career, and there were some main kind of impacts that she had. She really opened the door to me to kind of be like a woman basically in this crazy advertising world where you're kind of like, am I allowed to have kids? You know, am I not allowed to have kids? You know, so Court was like, you know, she encouraged me to ask for raises, like work flexibly, get my hair done during office hours, because that's what everyone did in the agency, was permitted. You know, have a kid, have another kid, and really just kind of balance it all the way that, whatever way you can. So that has been really powerful and kind of set up that idea of flexibility before that was a thing, and showed me that I could do it. And I could own that, which was amazing. And then as a writer, you know, she was a copywriter before, so really taught me how to speak in my own language and just like be real, be your totally insane self. Just bring your voice, however you talk, however you write, kind of bring that to the party. People want to know who you are. That is your brand. That is so important. As much as you might feel like you need to fit into a mold that you see someone else kind of living in. No, it's all about bringing your unique voice to the party and embracing that realness, speaking honestly with clients, kind of bringing that honesty to each other. So for me, like, it was just kind of an amazing experience. And I just feel like the reason why mentoring is so important is because our careers all go in these crazy directions. Like when you think of a career, you're like, oh, it just goes like this. But no, like they go left and right, and then there's a roundabout, and then you're kind of going down, and then you go back up, and it's I could go on. But it, for me, like sometimes you get lost. Sometimes, like right now, maybe you've called an Uber and no one's there to pick you up. But your mentor is always going to be there to guide you on this crazy trajectory and help you through those kind of times. So finding those people along the way, I just think are everything.
It's so true. And I think anyone who is mentored by you, Claire, is going to have a whole lot of fun, obviously.
I'm going to have a whole lot of fun.
Whole lot of fun. And also I think their vocab is going to expand exponentially. Swoonsville, like never heard of it. So if anyone wants their vocab expanded and to have a whole lot of fun with Claire, like obviously she's your girl. So now we've got someone who has like a completely different career in our whole sphere, and that's Priscilla. And Priscilla is founder of the Together Society. It's a fairly newish venture after a really, big career. Once again, I think in the UK, you can correct me, Priscilla, I think it's in the UK and in Australia. And so can you tell us about your mentor and why that mentor was so important for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, Claire, you talked about, needing a shining star, and I think you're a whole disco ball of shining, honey. So I think any mentee would be absolutely rapt to have you. They can dance under your brightness. But look, with my mentor, my main mentor, and I have had a couple, and I think what's also important to know is sometimes you can have people that do mentor you for a short time and then others for a lot longer, and they can pop in and out, but they can take all different forms and span a whole bunch of different times. So you don't have to be structured about seeking out your mentors either. So, but my let's say my main mentor was actually a client of mine, I think when I was 26. So I was still really cutting my teeth and really trying to hone my chops in client management. And he was CEO of a big footwear company, New Zealand's #1 footwear company. And somehow, some way, you just kind of gravitate towards people. And I guess that's what this program is about as well. So, and tonight, everyone meeting the mentors and then seeing who you gravitate towards. So we kind of gravitated towards each other, and to this day, I spoke to him last week. He's now gone on, he's now taking a job and waiting to get to New York when COVID allows him to. So he'll be taking a role there as a global CEO role for Rod and Gun. So, you know, our mentors grow as we grow as well. And, you know, I kind of think, holy shit, I know someone, you know, on that kind of scale. And that's pretty cool too. He has had an enormous impact on me, you know, to the point where overall he is actually the godfather of one of my children. So, you know, and, you know, I'm at all the family birthdays and likewise with him. So, you know, and something that I found, because this is my second year in the Assisterhood program, is I will also have a relationship and a friendship for life with my mentee from last year. And that's how things grow. It's not a, right, there you go, okay, thanks, off you trot. It's an enduring relationship, and you weave, you know, into each other's lives in a pretty special way. So, but look, I went to him with everything from, you know, every jump up that I had in my career, I would have imposter syndrome. And I think, you know, unless you have that bit of fear every time, you're probably overqualified for the job and you maybe shouldn't be doing it. So, you know, it's good to have that fear. And I would go to him every time, and, you know, he was great. You know, he just kind of made me look at things really realistically and from a client's perspective as well, which is, and just help me stay on course about, you know, what is important for, you know, the person that pays our bills at the end of the day, the clients that come into our business, and what are they seeking, and, you know, how can I add value to that experience for them? So gosh, it's been 20 years now that, you know, David has been in my life. So it's an enduring confidant, an enduring champion, and somebody that I will, you know, eternally, you know, call at the drop of a hat, and he will be there. And I know that he will be there. So yeah, it's been an incredible experience for me, both having a mentor.
It's so interesting, because I think I had the same experience last year with my mentee, Delara. And I think she might have joined, hopefully, this session as well. And we had a really, like a good, easy relationship. And it wasn't just actually about work. It was about the whole of life that we would talk about each time we did catch up, because work and life is also intertwined. And I think being a mentor is about understanding that particular person and their whole life and what is driving what. I find is really important to connect. And also to add value to that mentee.
Absolutely.
So thank you, Priscilla. I've got the next question now, and it's actually about gender representation in balance. And I think my observation is, in this industry, it's actually almost balanced in the opposite way when you're leaving university, or even going through university and starting off your career. The gender imbalance is actually the opposite. So there are more females than males often in our industry. And then as you actually grow up into leadership, it's still not balanced. It's actually advanced and got more balanced over the last decade. Absolutely. We're not there yet. And there's a whole lot of reasons as to why that is. I think even reflecting on what we're all going through now, like through COVID, and the flexibility that we're employing now in our work life, I think that's actually going to be really amazing for, I guess, us as females, and even navigating as we move into family stage, etc. It's going to, I think it's going to change the way that we work, and maybe it will help us, you know, move into leadership roles and realise that you actually don't have to be present in the office 100% of the time to actually be a leader. So Vicky's our head of broadcast and content at Publicis, and an absolute one of the queens of production in Queensland and in Australia. This is Vicky's third year as well. And so, Vicky, what do you think in terms of gender imbalance in leadership, and also reflecting on how you, I guess, see that it's changed, and what the possibilities are in marketing and comms and production in particular?
Hi, everybody. It's nice to see you. I'm sorry, a bit fuzzy. Look, thank you for inviting me along again. I enjoyed the last 2 years of this, and I'm happy to be back doing it again this year. Just when I was growing up, I've been around for a long time. and not as young as some of you other lovely ladies out there. But growing up, there was a considerable imbalance in gender in leadership roles. They were mainly men. I was lucky to work under a few great female role models coming through when I was younger, and being one of those was Joan Yardley. She led sort of Mojo, Yardley, Logan Advertising, and then it became MDA. So she was one of the only female MDs running an agency back in the day in the 80s. And then I had a wonderful mentor in Jude Bailey, who was a part owner and executive producer of the Best Picture Show company, who also looked after all the Steve Irwin documentaries with John Staten. So, they were two very wonderful and very clever women, and were ahead of their time in their leadership roles, really. And it was really only those two that you saw in the days, particularly in Brisbane. But I'd say now we've really changed the balance around, and as Simone said, there's more females actually coming out of those universities and colleges, and we are getting there. Whether it's now wage discrepancy versus gender discrepancy, really, I think we're still very underpaid as far as leaders, and that's hopefully changing. But if we look around now, we look around at our industry, and we look around just in the agencies in Brisbane, they're being led by very strong women, in Priscilla, in Simone, in Nancy Hartley, in Christine Gannon. There's some very strong leaders in agencies in Brisbane that are female. In particular, our leadership team in Brisbane has more females than men in their leadership roles there. So we're well represented in leadership roles within our agency, but also within our industry. And I think if you looked at production in our industry, very strong presence of lead female producers and production company owners as well. So we had significant change since when I first started until now, which is great. I think we might have scared off a few men, actually, so we probably need to get a bit of men action back into the production world. But in saying that, we have some great male producers and production company owners out there as well, and I talk to all these guys many times a day, just as mates, as mentors, as peers, and as friends. And I think there's certainly a balance. And if you look in the wider group now of clients clients of our agency, we've got leadership in women in TMR, in Queensland Health, in Suncorp. Lots of businesses like that, Subway, RACQ. There's very strong leaders in women out there in all those groups. And you look at Anastasia Palaszczuk. She's running the government in Queensland, or the state government at the moment. So we are well represented, I think, now than we were previously. So go girls.
Yeah, I think the thing for me is, like, we just want to get to a point where it's not even a conversation. And so I think when I became MD of this agency, from the start, I've always just chosen the person who's right for the job. It just so happens that we've now got a bit of an overrepresentation of females versus males, but that hasn't been because I've gone, I want a female. Like, it's just because the right person for the job has come up. So yeah, I think I really look forward to a time, and I'm hoping that it's soon, where we're just not even talking about gender. It's about who's the right person for the job. I think the next question that I've got is, it's an interesting question, and it's for Erin Kaur, who, and Erin is head of marketing at Queensland Ballet. Erin has also, when I first met Erin, she was on the agency side, so she's got agency and client experience, which is really interesting for someone, I guess, who wants to be mentored by someone who has got experience on both sides. So she'll bring quite a different perspective into it as well. And my question for Erin is, what is the best way to deal with the imposter syndrome? Or is it just something that we need to live with?
Thank you, Simone. I love this question because I think, first of all, let's decide what this means. Imposter syndrome is really about self-doubt and worrying about, you not being able to kind of make it, or you're doing something beyond your ability. And I think the first thing is that having awareness that you're worried about that is wonderful, because there's this kind of cognitive bias called the Dunning-Kruger effect that kind of starts up high and then scoops down like this, and it's kind of got confidence and experience on the two axes, right? So when you first start out, you have an incredible amount of confidence and no experience, and you're like, I know everything. And then the more experience you get, the less you feel like you know. So if you're kind of in that stage of, that valley of despair, they call it, that's okay. That just means you're getting more experience and you're doing a good job. So I think there's probably just a few simple tips about this. It's really about mindset, and it's really about confidence. So, part of that is putting pressure on yourself to achieve something. One way you can do that is to change your mindset about that definition of achievement. Rather than just focusing on outcomes the whole way, instead consider achievement being the process of learning and the process of delivering across the way. That's a simple way to do it. They often link imposter syndrome with perfectionism as well. So, take off some of those, high bars that you're setting for yourself. And sometimes, done is good enough. I think it's something, we're in a very sort of feminine environment today as well. So it's something you hear more often from females, that lack of confidence and putting yourself forward. I haven't come across anyone in a situation they shouldn't be yet. So just back yourself, change your mindset, challenge your thinking, back yourself, and you can fake it till you make it. There's plenty of other people that have done that.
Yeah, I think the thing for me is, if you know your topic and you know your content and you've done your work, then and I think Claire said it right at the beginning, be yourself and represent yourself, and, and you know what, you're an expert in what you're about to share. So just, be it, I think. So thank you, Erin. I really love the axes as well. I think that's absolutely right. And we all go through periods of self-doubt also. And that's when a mentor really, I think, kicks in. And you can reach out to that mentor and have someone to bounce off. So thank you. My next question is actually about when you are faced with wanting to, you're always in situations where you are put with people that you absolutely admire. But then when the time comes, you might have a little bit of anxiety about it. And this question is for Kelly Newbury, and she's the head of marketing at IntelliHR. So welcome, Kelly. So how have you dealt with this when you've been in situations where you've got someone that you really admire, but there's just a little bit of anxiety around when you actually do meet them?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. And I think it's something that a lot of us have experienced in our lives, whether it's in a professional situation or even in a personal situation. But someone once said to me, and she's a very wise woman, she said, if you don't ask, you don't get. If you don't go out there and put yourself out there, you just won't have that opportunity necessarily land in your lap again. And it's something I apply to sort of all facets of my life. So not just when I want to speak to someone that I admire, but right through to asking for a pay rise or a promotion. If you don't ask, sometimes you just don't get. So that's something I think it's worth keeping in mind when you're looking to speak or reach out to someone you really admire. The other thing I'll say is, when you're nervous about meeting someone, if you've got the opportunity, it can be really good to do a little bit of creepy research beforehand, find out what they're interested in outside of work, or maybe they've had a role that is in an industry that you've worked in before. Just try and find a little bit of common ground, so you've got a bit of an icebreaker to put out there and get the conversation rolling, because it can be a bit nerve-wracking going up to someone and just sort of being like, hi, and not really knowing where to take it from there. So if you have some common ground, that's great. If you don't, my advice is just to think about how you would feel if someone came up to you and said, hey, I really admire you. I'd love to have a chat and get to know you a bit better. Most people will genuinely be very flattered that you admire them. And most people I've encountered in my career are really happy to give you the time of day and to talk to you. So hopefully that's a bit of advice you can take away if you get that opportunity.
I'm going to jump in really quickly here, Simone, because I'm massively guilty of doing this. I think I've done this to several of you on this panel tonight, actually. So, but I'm going to recount my example with Sarah Jane, because Sarah Jane, I heard speak at a Women in Digital event maybe like 4 years ago now when I first started out, and I thought she was amazing, and I thought, oh my God, I want to know more about her. I want to have a one-on-one conversation. So I reached out to her, and I was just starting out, so I thought I'm going to reach out and find, I played the whole I'm a student card. So I said, hi Sarah Jane, when I connected with her on LinkedIn. I'm a university, I'm a final year a university student at UQ and really interested in all parts of marketing. I know you're a leader in tech and all things digital. Can you spend 30 minutes with me having a coffee to tell me more about your day-to-day life? And here we are today. I've asked today, Sarah Jane's on the Assisterhood panel, and she's continuing to kick goals. So definitely think that this is something that's worth doing. If you don't ask, then you don't know what's going to happen.
Do we have Sarah Kelly on the as one of our mentors? Has she joined?
Yes. Hello.
Sarah, no, sorry, this is a bit of a surprise for you, but like you're someone, and I just thought I'd throw to this because you're someone that I've like admired from afar for so long, and I can remember then when I guess when we first met, I was like, I'm Simone, and I felt like I really like needed to sell myself because I've just been watching you like from afar for so. And so I think my point is it doesn't change. I think like for me, it doesn't matter when I've been in my career. I've always had like people that I admire from afar, and then I really want to meet, just because of I feel like there's a connection there. Would you agree?
So. And I'm sorry, I am in shock. It was a very unexpected question, that one, I can tell you, because I would say the exact same about you, and you know that I know a lot, and I'm sure everyone here knows the incredible amount of work Simone does, not only in this industry, but I know for so many not-for-profits and I'm involved in around town. So I certainly admire you. The mutual admiration is there, Simone. You're an incredible leader in this industry and generally for our community. But yeah, no, look,
yeah, it's funny that you never grow out of it. Yeah. I think that's what, I think that's the lesson. We never grow out of it.
But I think also...
you're right. And there's so many that I admire the same.
Just adding in there, I think what's really interesting probably coming through now is that when you... when you are in more senior roles, you remember when you were that person who was the intern or the most junior member on staff and feeling anxious. So I think there's this sense of understanding that we've been in that position. And while I guess as mentees, it can be very anxious talking to more senior people, but we've actually all been there ourselves and we understand what it's like. And that to rest assured, we can really empathise with that position because we've been there ourselves at some point. And as you said, Simone, we're still there today in some instances.
Yeah, so true. Thank you, Christine. So Christine, just to introduce Christine, is the managing partner of Clemenger, so one of our other agencies in town, and someone else who like I greatly admire. And the thing about today is in this industry and in Queensland is, you know, we're all, I guess, as an industry, all very supportive of each other. And I think growing up, it wasn't always like that. It was actually more combative and competitive. And I really love the fact that, you know, we actually genuinely admire each other in this industry now. So I think we're in a good place, I think, in Queensland. I've got another question now, and it's for Alex Sundquist. And Alex is actually someone that I admire greatly, and she works with me. I did seek her out to work with me a few years ago, and she comes with a really interesting, I guess, very digital background and career path. So if you're looking for someone who can actually give you a lot of different perspectives in terms of different work, who she's been exposed to, I think Alex would be an amazing mentor. And my question for Alex is, what is the one main skill, do you think, and I think this is a really hard question, like one main skill that all great leaders have, and how do you develop that?
For me, I think, hello everybody, by the way. I'm Alex.
Do you have a baby there, Alex? Did I hear a baby?
I actually do. He just came home from daycare. So I think that's actually a thing for, all us young career, females as well, making sure that leaders have the understanding that we are trying to juggle quite a lot when it comes to being a mum, and also at the same time being a career female, and none of us kind of want to give any of that up. So I guess that comes to, one of the big things that I admire in Simone, in the sense that she's always giving the opportunity for everyone to really balance that family life and also the work life at the same time. I think it's also starting to seep in, not just for females, but also for males, because we are sharing the roles in the households these days. And it's really important just to understand those aspects of life, that everyone has several things going on at the same time. Now, I actually did write down a few words just to kind of prepare myself, and I did have compassion as the first word. I think compassion is really important, and just having that understanding that everyone's going through something every day. Now, I lead a team of 7 people at the moment, and there's not a single day that one of them doesn't have something going on, privately, at least in the world that we're living at the moment, because the majority of my team members are actually from overseas as well. So they do have the concern for like family and friends overseas as well. And that comes up day to day. The other stuff that I actually had is just courage. Now, I know it's come up a couple of times as well, but if you don't try, and if you don't, if you're afraid to fail, you're never going to, move forward in life either. So I think courage is really important. Like, don't be afraid to fail, and just have those people around you who are there to kind of give that feedback afterwards and actually help you get back up. And maybe every situation where you fail is not that bad. You actually learn from all of that all the time. The other thing is drive. I just think it's really important to make sure that you have that drive, and from being a leader, not just driving the team that you have, but being able to just move forward with things as well. Be more courageous and drive through things, and just making sure that you surround yourself with people as well who kind of push you forward. I think one thing that I really admire in the leadership team that I work with at the moment is that we have this transparency with each other, and we all kind of trust each other. And we've gone through so many offsites and kind of leadership training sessions and everything. And it just goes to show that the more we do that as well, and the more transparent we are, and the more, we build that trust with each other, the more we can move forward and actually also lead the teams that we have. I think that's really important. Like, that's what I've noticed. For me, that's actually really helped. And the open feedback, again, is really important. So just make sure that, don't be afraid of getting feedback from your teams. It's not about a one-way street where all the leaders give feedback. I think good leaders really are open to that feedback from their teams, making sure that they can grow as well. And we do have a bit of a background audience. Yeah. So apologies for that. But yeah, feedback. You'll all grow, and I think it's also about growing as a leader, but also growing as a person who is leading other people forward is really important.
I really like that, to take on like courage and compassion. I think and open feedback. I think they're really good messages. I might also throw to Kelly Brightwell. So Kelly, what do you think? Like, how would you describe the one main skill that all great leaders have, and how do you develop it?
I think for me, the one skill that all great leaders have is emotional intelligence. And it's really coming back to that compassion and empathy for your team, but also being able to think first and act later can be really vital and I guess I'm thinking in our current context in times of crisis. Beyond that, and it's something that it's funny because it's really important to our industry, but not always something that we see in people within our industry, is communication. And it comes back to that, I guess the agencies like to say shit in, shit out. If you provide really poor communication, you're going to get really poor responses. So for me, that is absolutely the most important piece.
Yeah, I completely agree. Thanks, Kelly. And actually, I just want to go back to the imposter question again, and I just want to touch base with Nicole Hartley on the imposter question. So what are your thoughts around that? Like, do you have any different experiences that you can share, Nicole?
Thanks, Simone. I appreciate being here today. It's wonderful to be in the same sort of Zoom room with all of you wonderful women. So thank you so much.
So Nicole, by the way, is the MBA director and lecturer researcher at UQ. It was quite a different perspective in as well.
Absolutely. Well, I started out in advertising. That was my field, and I had this dream of being in agencies, and I got a job in an agency, and I went, oh, I don't want to do this. So, and that's it.
Fair enough.
And so I went and taught people to be in agencies, which is unique, right? Yeah, imposter syndrome. I think it's something that we have all experienced, and I think Erin before brought up some really good points about it, and I think we're still talking about it in so many ways through all these other answers. There's kind of like, it's all these things about just being confident in yourself, and hearing some other responses there around wanting, just sort of being okay with failing. I think that's a big thing too. And what does failure really mean? Failure means that you made a mistake, and that to make a mistake is human. So if you're coming across as human, you're actually going to be connecting with a whole lot more people. It feeds into the leadership thing as well. But imposter syndrome is something, yeah, obviously that I think, we feel it internally, but I think it's a really socially driven construct. It's something that, we're kind of going, well, what are they going to say? When am I going to get caught out? When are people going to sort of see that I'm not the person that I'm supposed to be? And really that's a lot of pressure that we tend to put on ourselves. And so if we strip that layer back and not put that pressure on ourselves, and we kind of do our mantras and go, you've got this, girl, you've got it. I've done the time, I've done the research, I've been here before, I've done this before, and I didn't explode, it didn't blow up in my face, and really back ourselves in that way. I think then it strips away and changes that mentality that I think Erin was talking about before too, in terms of, you've got it, you've earned the right to do what you do, and people will appreciate you in whether you're flawed or not, in how you approach, everyday life.
Thank you. I think it's such a good point, and I think this is the difference between, females and males, and we do tend to, undersell ourselves and question ourselves a little bit more, and that's just something really natural that we need to acknowledge and also overcome. I think so. Yeah, it's about knowing your content, knowing your stuff, and believing in yourself. Mm-hmm. Christine, just to throw to you, what's the main thing? Because you obviously, over your career, you've interviewed a lot of prospective people that in interview situations. What's the main thing that you look at when deciding on a potential new team member? I know that I always look at them and think, like, do they have the potential? Would I like to report into them one day? Do they have that potential? Like, I actually try and flip it on myself sometimes and play a game like that. What do you do?
That's actually a really interesting game. And I think, the main, for me, I guess it comes down to a couple of things, and it does differ depending on what kind of position that you're hiring for. But there are a couple of really clear principles, I think, particularly when we're talking about agency world. And I wrote a couple down so I didn't forget. But I think that when you start to look at, prospective employees and you're hiring, you sort of get an understanding that being able to do the skill set of the job is pretty much a given, and everybody you're speaking with is going to be able to do that. So you start to then look for what's over and above, like, is there an edge to them in the way they manage things? Also in agency world, you want to understand, like, are they intuitive, and do they have a great work ethic? Because, in creative agencies, you do work really hard, and you have to be prepared and passionate and love what you do to be able to be willing to put in that time. As much as we all work really smart these days and we work flexibly, it's still it's not a sort of clock on, clock off kind of role. So you want to understand that there's a really strong work ethic. And I read this, I think, in a dodgy crime novel a few years ago, but I loved it as a saying. And it was like, how you do anything is how you do everything. And I love the way that you approach, like you do everything, you have a great work ethic, you're always applying the same principles, whether it's a really small project or whether it's something really large. And I think when you start to see that coming through in people, it really makes them stand head and shoulders above everybody else. I think when we talk about intuition and intuitive, I think particularly when you're in client-facing roles or whether you are a client, the ability to have an understanding and be able to have a strong rapport with your team, but also then say with your clients is really important. So that understanding of not just being able to understand what's said, but being able to understand what's not said. They're sometimes a little bit different if you're talking about somebody who may be an editor who sits in a room and does things every day, but definitely if you are working in team environments really regularly. And I also think it's really important to understand that while cultural fit is really important to any organisation, and understanding of an organisational culture is really good and how you might fit into that, that I think particularly in creative agencies, and there's not an expectation for people to fit the mould. It takes all types, and we work with amazing creative thinkers, and you have to love creative ideas and love creativity. But as long as you have that in common, you can be anyone, and I think lots of different personalities and different styles that complement each other actually is what makes life really interesting in creative agency world. I've had a couple of instances where I've had people who might be mid-level account managers, maybe account directors who were considering leaving the industry, and I've always said to them, you know, maybe understand how important creativity is to what you do every day, because that can be the thing, not to say that that only exists within agencies, but a love for creativity can be the thing that makes a difference between maybe working outside of agencies and working within. So, and I think particularly in agency world, that's really important. Have a passion for creative thinking, support creative ideas, because creative ideas are hard. You know, they're not necessarily the easiest solution. They take passion and they take commitment to see the light of day. So I think, you know, a true love for creativity forms a foundation of a lot of people who work in our field. That's just a few things, yeah.
Yeah, look, I absolutely, completely agree. I've worked in my career on client-side, agency side, and the reason I'm agency side is because I love creativity. Like, I just love being a creative piece, solving, you know, different problems and crossing over into different industries every day on client side. And, you know, and this is, although it's been a really important part of my career path, and I think it's actually helped me form who I am today. You know, you do have to, you realise that creativity and dealing with the agency and your external partners are only like a small slither of your day. So that's the difference, I think, between client and agency. So thanks, Christine. I've got a question now for Georgia Bell. And Georgia is General Manager of the Vivo Group. So welcome, Georgia, to Assisterhood. And my question for you is actually around specialisation. And this question kind of leads on from where Christine left off, like specialisation versus versatility. And what's your stance on specialists and generalists in marketing? It's quite an interesting question, and I've actually, I guess, mentored quite a lot of people around this over time.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, thank you so much, Simone, and thank you so much, everyone, I guess, for being here. This is like the warmest virtual room of women. I'm so happy to be a part of this group. So very excited for 2020. This is a really interesting question. I think, look, my take on this is that it really comes down to your own personal, I guess, objectives and what your goals are for yourself. If you are someone that is, if you're super passionate about a particular area and your dream for yourself is to be an absolute expert in that field, I would say specialization is a really, really good path to look at. And I think especially, you know, I'm in a digital field, it's really tech heavy. And I think
it only gets more and more sophisticated and specialized as technology advances. So if you're looking at digital marketing or anything that's got a technical component, and I definitely think from a creative perspective, it's not sort of that, technology plays a key role there as well. So specialization, I think, absolutely has a place. For me in my career, I've sort of always tended towards more generalist roles. So I've sort of gained quite broad experience across a number of different areas, but never to a point where I was fully owning the execution. And I think if you, I guess, want to play in more of a strategy role or a strategy space, being generalist works really well, because you need to understand, I guess, all the different options that you've got available so that you can make really positive recommendations. And also, I guess, if you want to move into a leadership role, being a generalist fits really well, because again, it's the same, it's quite similar to strategy. You've got to understand how all those different moving parts come together and how they need to work sort of in unison. So I really think it does come back to sort of what your objectives are, sort of where do you want to go, what are you really passionate about, if you've got something that you really want to do. But I think especially when you're starting out early on in your career, you don't necessarily need to pick one and then that's the decision you make forever. You know what I mean? You can sort of, as Claire was saying really early on, our careers take the most interesting twists and turns, and so it's going to change and evolve. So I think there's definitely a space for both. Above all, I'd probably say credibility is really key. Now we can sort of we look for social validation on essentially every decision that we make, whether it's a 5-star rating or a peer review on something. And so I think the credibility in your work is super important. So if you approach your job and your role, I think with passion and integrity and tenacity, you're bound to succeed regardless of which way you go.
Yeah, and I think when we thanks, Georgia. When we do come up to the Q&A at the end, there are a couple of questions, I think, around this topic, and so we will come back to that as well. I will actually go through to Kelly, because you might have a perspective, Kelly, being head of marketing, in terms of specialisation versus versatility as well. What's your experience?
Oh, sorry. I thought that was me. My bad. 2 Kellys.
Oh, Kelly Newbury. Kelly Newbury.
No worries. I really agree with what George has said about where you want to take your career. If you are looking to get into a leadership role or even a management role, it is important that you have an understanding of the different disciplines that will then be in your team. So, for example, if you're a specialist in at Google Ads search, for example, it would be very hard for you to then make a transition over to being a generalist marketing manager. So with that in mind, if there's something that you're really passionate about and you really want to follow that path, by all means, go down the specialist route. But if you have, aspirations of being in leadership and management, then it is really worth considering how you can ensure that you really clearly understand and will be able to mentor and guide the people that will then be on your team. The other thing I'll say is it really does depend where you are at with your career, as well as Georgia sort of said. If you're in the early phase of your career, I really encourage you to try out different areas of specialization, because while you might think that there's something that you're so passionate about and that's really where you want to take your career, you might find that there's secondary areas or even third areas that you still really enjoy and you want to explore further. So especially in the early stages of your career, I do encourage you to try out different parts of, whether it's marketing or whatever your area of expertise is, while you can. And then as you progress your career, round it out as needed. The other thing I will just quickly say on this is, even if you become a specialist in a very niche area, for example, we're seeing a lot of marketers in the data science space at the moment. That's really going off. If you find yourself specializing in that area, it's still really valuable to have secondary skills that you can bring in. When I look at the teams that I've managed in the past, my last team, for example, we had 10 people on the team. And something I was really, really passionate about was ensuring that we didn't have a single point of failure. So that meant that everybody that I brought into the team, even though they were in specialist roles, they still had secondary skills, so that we had a really well-rounded team. And if one person couldn't make it in or took 3 weeks leave, there was always someone else in the team that could sort of supplement their skills. So that's just a couple of things to consider when you're taking your career forward.
Yeah, it's really good advice, and that's something that that I kind of live by and advise people as well. Like, you need to have a core, but you need to have a +1, and some people have a +1+1. And I think even in my own career, I mean, I started in PR and then went into corporate communications and then went into brand identity and then worked into marketing and then into brand strategy, and now I'm MD. So it's like specialise, like builds my +1, +1, +1 to actually then round out. So it's really good advice. My next question is for Sarah Jane, and Sarah Jane is the Managing Director of ATEC, so welcome, Sarah. And the question that I've got for you, it's actually about asking you whether you've got any tips for encouraging your team to be more proactive. It's quite a specific question about improving internal systems and processes. So if you have got a team member who can see how they can improve, like how do you actually encourage them to speak up and to actually, approach it with you?
Yes, this is an excellent question about leadership. When it comes to improving internal systems and processes, if that's not already happening within your team, there's probably one of two problems, I would say. Either it's a communication problem or it's a budget problem. Now, when I say budget, I'm talking about the priorities within your business, within your team. So if internal process improvement isn't happening naturally, if it doesn't have a proactive focus, then maybe you're not allocating budget or time to internal process improvement. If process improvement should be a priority, you need to be setting aside some time for your team to work on it. Maybe it's 2 hours every Friday morning, 1 day a month, or allocating an entire project budget to a specific improvement initiative. I know within my business, if we don't allocate specific hours and resources to internal process improvement, it just simply doesn't get done. What you may find is that process improvement isn't happening because the team thinks that you have other priorities, which you usually do, which is delivering projects for customers and daily operations. So you need to be clear about how each team member should spend their time each and every day. Are they working on customer projects, or are they thinking about process improvement, or are they implementing process improvement? Be clear about what your priorities are and specifically how much time should be spent on each of those priorities. And this is all about communication. You'll find that at one point or another, almost every single one of your team members will come to you with a suggestion for some kind of process improvement. And that communication could come in a variety of forms, maybe just small comments that they've made. And you must be on the lookout always for these sorts of suggestions, because every single one of those suggestions is a golden opportunity for training that team member. It's about training your team that they can come to you for suggestions for improvement, and that when you hear those suggestions, you take action. Now, if one of your team members makes a suggestion and you turn around and say, oh, well, yeah, that's really annoying, but that's just the way it is. That's the way it's always been. Or we don't have any budget to fix that. You're shutting down those requests. And what you're really doing is you're sending a message to your team that process improvement is not actually a priority. So if you want your team to be proactive about improving internal processes and systems, you need to show your team that they can come to you and that they can rely on you as someone who'll be a champion for them, someone who's going to help them make their job easier. And talented employees will always be on the lookout for better tools, better ways of working, because talented employees, they love what they do and they're keen to do it in a more effective, more efficient way. So it's absolutely critical that when your employees communicate with you, that you listen and that you take immediate proactive steps and you tell them what you're going to do to bring their ideas to life. If you shut them down in any way with their suggestions, they will learn that process improvement is not a priority for you or the organization, and that they should just give up making suggestions for improvement. So there's really two aspects there. Number one, dedicate some budget and time for process improvement. Two, listen to your team and act as a champion for them so that when they make suggestions, you fight to deliver those results for them and by doing that, you create a culture that prioritizes process improvement.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think it's actually a really good sign of someone who's got like that entrepreneurial spirit, who does come to you with solutions and suggestions, like never shut them down. I think a lot of people probably, you know, they, once they realize that they go to, you know, they go to their leader and, you know, make a suggestion, if, you know, that leader turns around and goes, okay, can you make it happen? I mean, that's the best result. Kelly, the other Kelly Brightwell, have you got any perspectives on this one?
Yeah, I think for me, process improvement ultimately is the tool to improve your team culture. Because if you think about the pain points that you experience at work, so many of those are flaws in communications and systems and processes. So what we've done in the past, which is a really simple tool, and it can be rough and ready, it doesn't need to be absolutely, sorry, I've got a toddler about to attack me. It doesn't need to be absolutely structured, but if you think about every time you do a project, spend 20 minutes catching up together as a team, do a quick retro, talk about what could we have done better, how could we have improved our sorry guys, how could we improve our systems and processes, what were the failure points, celebrate the successes, but also pick up on those failure points and don't let them go unnoticed, but also don't let them go unfixed. So it might just be a matter of putting them up on a board and then having a quick brainstorming session. And what we've found in the past is that saves us not only time in our systems and processes, but it's also picked up on a few potential breaches that we might have in the past. From a legislative perspective, I work in finance, and it's really important for us to make sure we've dotted the I's and crossed the T's. So, sorry, really distracted.
It's very good multitasking. Very good multitasking.
I know, yeah, you can see mum life. But absolutely, for me, the biggest thing is capture those pieces, make space at the end of each of your processes, celebrate your success, but also find at the end of a campaign, what could we have done better? Capture it, make sure you're picking up those little bits and pieces, and they are small incremental changes, but they make a massive difference overall. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. That was great. I might move on to the next question. It's from Megan Elliott. She's a group business director of Zenith, and I think it's Megan's second year as an Assisterhood mentor. It's around international experience, and I think everyone's got this idea that they have to get international experience to, you know, to really progress in their career. I mean, fundamentally, I disagree. But what's your view on this?
I think, Simone, it's really, really easy, especially at the beginning, to think that there are all of these tick boxes that you have to meet to have a great career. And I think just listening to everybody who's already spoken so far is that you start out thinking about this linear progression of your career. But if you actually like zoom in and look at what any of us have done, that progression has gone like this, it's gone down, it's gone up, it's gone sideways, it's gone all sorts of places. So if you sit back and think that your career progression is a series of tick boxes, which include international experience, then I think you're not quite getting what you need to do to have a great career. And I think part of that is that you've got to be open to all experiences. And just saying that you've had overseas experience is the experience that I've heard today from all the panelists is amazing, but whether it was overseas or whether it was here in good old Australia doesn't actually make one experience better than the other. And I've got friends who have been overseas and they go, oh, it was you know, I had a great time. And I said, what did you work on and what did you learn? And they said, well, you know, I worked on Apple. And I go, oh my God, Apple, that sounds so exciting. And they said, no, actually we spent our entire time going through lists to find out whether there was more than one 30-second commercial in an hour in every country. So they spent their whole time ticking through data. And some of the stuff that you get to do here on little clients in Australia is way more exciting and way more of an awesome experience in building a career than any of what might seem like the really amazing, big, bright, shiny toys. So I think when you say what's necessary for a good career, curiosity is necessary, connections are necessary. I think in my entire life, I have got every single job from knowing somebody, and I don't mean nepotism. I mean being really clear on what I was curious about and where I wanted to go next, and talking to people about it, and opportunities that aren't published in the paper come to you because you've been really open and honest about what you're seeking, and then somebody knows somebody who puts you in contact with somebody, and you get open to these experiences. And not all of those experiences are jobs either. You know, I spent 6 months doing an event that was a fundraiser for my kids' kindy. Now that was amazing, and I learnt lots of really cool things there. That didn't happen overseas. That happened up the road at Red Hill. So, you know, you just need to be open to experiences. You need to be curious about why things are the things that they are. You need to talk to people you genuinely need to take in, be an absolute sponge, and then you need to work out, what does a great career look like for you anyway? You know, it might sound glamorous to be, to be overseas working on this or that, but that mightn't even be who you truly are. And I think it was Nicole who said earlier, you know, I really wanted to be an agency, got into agency and realised it wasn't even me. So I think just keep checking in with yourself, understand where you want to go, where your passions take you. And I love that piece of advice earlier about always making sure that you've got a +1, and that can come from all sorts of places. And it can come from, I talk to a lot of my friends about what their jobs are and what their jobs do, and you learn stuff from that. It's not always on the job, because work life, it's not a balance, it's all one thing. You know, you are one person, and it's just a whole heap of experiences that get you there. So being curious, making connections, talking to people, and understanding what makes consumers tick is what drives everything in our industry.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And like in terms of international experience, I think it's around if you're doing it for the right reasons. And an international experience is actually about maybe your experience in life, and it maybe rounds you out as a person. It just can't be a tick box, because, and it goes back to actually something Christine said earlier. I think it's how you do anything is how you do everything. And it doesn't matter where you do that in the world. You take you with you.
And I think the other thing, Simone, is that you and I both work for a global company. We're French owned, which means that being in Australia means that we're still global anyway. So, you know, I do a fortnightly call with the strategy team out of London. I get hooked in on webinars that are being hosted out of the US. Like, you're still getting international experience here at home. It's just finding those things, and that's what the web can do.
Yes, I've got a 7:30 phone call with Paris tonight, actually. So the time zone difference isn't so great either. But anyway, I also might just throw,
you know, overseas. When we talk about overseas, it's more about life experiences and what it can give you. And that's a very important thing. I mean, I think a lot of us have done it and had those experiences and brought home. You know, I mean, I worked in all sorts of things, banks and Boots the chemist and production companies, agencies, but lots and lots of different things. And it was a grand old time. But the best thing about it was how you grow and how you experience and other worlds, other people, other industry. And I think it's more about life lessons.
Completely agree. Carolyn, I think we might hear from you on this one as well. So you're head of strategy of growth ops. What's your perspective on this?
Well, first of all, you'll tell by my accent that I am Canadian. So obviously I'm here with international experience. But I do agree with what both Megan and yourself said about you can't seek international experience if it's about box ticking and updating your resume. When and if you choose to look at experiences, for me, it's more about challenging yourself outside of your comfort zone. And I've worked in multiple cities, multiple countries. I speak 3 languages. And for me, it was about stretching myself and going beyond my comfort zone. I'll share with you on the chat channel. I believe that magic happens outside of your comfort zone. And for me, it was about leaving my home city. So I'm from Montreal. We're bilingual. We're French and English. And I was working at Publicis at the time. And I worked on a global account, so I got to work out of Montreal, out of Toronto, out of New York, and out of Paris. And I learned a lot about internal politics, a lot about cultural differences, a lot about client management, a lot about how the fact that strategy in Canada and America is completely different than Europe. So for me, it was a huge learning experience. But I also failed. I learned about failure. I speak Spanish and decided that I would go to Chile. And when I got there, they realized, wow, her Spanish is not as good as we thought it was. And I had to quickly get very good at Spanish. And I was so miserable that I tried. And after 6 months, I just came back to Canada. But for me, it is about learning. And so you don't need to leave Brisbane to learn, but you need to set the goalposts to stretch your comfort zone. And you need to figure out what is your comfort zone. Some people stay in jobs for 10, 12 years and they grow and grow and learn and learn. And some people stay in the same job in the same company because they're comfortable. So for a go-getter, it's about being able to be honest and questioning yourself. You know, I have a mantra that's, life's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And the journey, it's like a roller coaster. It has ups and it has downs. So for me, I gained some of that knowledge through my international experiences. And I see some people in my team that it might not be part of their path, but there's one person in my team. I don't want her to leave, but I told her one day when you do decide to move on, you should look outside of Brisbane because I can feel that it's more natural in her path. So I gently prod people, but it has to be true to your nature and true to what you want to accomplish.
Yeah, so true. Just be true to yourself. And Alex, you might have some perspective on this as well.
I think I'm in a bit of a same situation in the sense that this is my 10th year in Australia. But before then, I've kind of worked in Europe in different countries and originally actually from Finland. So English is my third language with 2 other languages on top. I think experiences are really important, but also the networks you build, right? So we've got 21 amazing mentors here with all the amazing people that I've met in Australia. I still keep in contact with all the great people that I've met overseas, right? So I know that I kind of harped on about this last year when we had the launch for Assisterhood as well, but I all think it's about the contacts that you make. It's really important to start early to build those networks. And it doesn't matter if it doesn't all need to be female, it doesn't all need to be male. It's just about making sure that you surround yourself with people who can really, inspire you. It's not about just taking you where you want to go. It's also about inspiring and keeping you going. I know that there's a lot of, of the females in this group that I reach out to when I'm really frustrated, or I know that I reach out even overseas when I feel that I'm stuck. So it's just about taking those lifelong friends that you can say along on your journey that you want to take.
Yeah, it's really good advice. And so the next question that I've got is, it's actually for Jessamy Ross. And Jessamy is a copywriter, a senior copywriter at Growth Ops. And we're in very strange times at the moment, obviously. And, even with flexibility now going to increase for us, the question is going to come up around freelance or full-time. And then the world is demanding more and more, more nimble and versatile solutions in our industry. What would you advise for starting a career, Jessamy?
Well, I think that everyone has their own path that they follow. And, that path might include a little bit of freelance. Mine has a little bit of freelance, a lot of full-time, some part-time. And I actually had a really interesting chat for a phone article. For an article I was writing the other day about flexible work. And I talked to Emma Walsh, who's the CEO of Parents at Work. And she talked about thinking about the employee lifespan, and that at different points in your career, you need different things from your employer. So when you're first starting out, you have that room to kind of take some risks. And you really need to be flexible at the start of your career to get in there and get into the workplace and find a foothold. Send off little bits of information, send bits of yourself out to agencies, get a day work experience here, get a week over here, meet people and make those connections that Alex was talking about. Because once you do that, then you hit a bit of a stability phase where you're working hard. You hopefully find yourself in one agency for a long time where you can build, if you're a creative, where you can, and I guess in other roles as well, where you can build those relationships and find mentors in your job that can develop your skill set and really get your craft going. So I was really lucky when I was at Junior Crew and Ogilvy to work with John O'Drapes, and he as a creative director, and he really drilled my skills and honed my skills. And then when you start to come into that second phase of your career, it's your workplace that needs to be flexible for you. So you start by having to be a bit flexible and a bit agile. You move through stability, and then you get to a point where flexibility is what you need. So I'm lucky enough to be working 4 days, well, in normal times, working 4 days a week and having 1 day at home with my 2 kids. And that's amazing. It's something I wouldn't have expected at the start of my career, especially because the industry's come a long way as well. But it will be interesting to see what pans out after this kind of COVID period with the new world of flexibility. Maybe I wrote an article about it when I was on a 4-day arrangement, that really wasn't the norm. But maybe after this, maybe it kind of will become something that's more normal and more expected. So
yeah, I really hope so. It was only a couple of years ago when I asked for 4 days, in the office and 1 day at home, and it was denied to me. And that only a couple of years ago is really sad. So I think it's actually going to change all of our outlooks. Sarah Jane, have you got any perspectives on this one?
Yeah, it's quite interesting because when I started my business, I was pregnant with my first child. And so I've always had my children around growing my business. And when I hired my first employee, he had had a baby arrive, and then another baby with significant special needs. So he needed to be at home as well. And every employee that came along seemed to have some sort of good reason why they needed to be at home as well. And so we've always worked from home. We do have an office, but we literally never use it. And most of our customers prefer for us to go on site to their location. So I've got an entire team now that works remotely and always has done. And that's meant that we've been flexible in being able to hire all across Australia. So we've got staff working in Cairns, Moreton Bay, Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, Tasmania, and New Zealand. And, it's always worked really well for us. So while everybody's getting used to the new normal, it's simply just the normal for us.
Yeah, no, it's great. I think you're absolutely right. It's going to become all of our normals, which is incredibly exciting. Okay, so on to a completely different topic now, and it's actually the world of marketing is continuing to advance with marketing technologies, so MarTech. Susan Lyons is our Exec Strategy Director at Publicis, and has quite a career, has been at PwC, has been at Michael Hill, has been at CHEP, and so she brings a vast amount of experience. Susan, what are your favourite emerging marketing technologies right now?
So I have maybe a bit of an interesting philosophy on marketing technologies, which is that all marketing technologies are equal, but some are more equal than others. And that's really just maybe a fancy or a confusing way to say that I think it depends. So there are definitely some things that I look at and that I find interesting right now, which I'll get to. But I really just want to, I guess, stress the point to everybody that none of this stuff exists in a bubble. That there's no marketing technology that is there that is going to suddenly come in and change our worlds unless there is a consumer need for it. And it doesn't mean that that need is necessarily something that we're aware of. It could be something that consumers don't know that they need, and then something comes in and, delights us. But I think when people are thinking about marketing technologies as ways to completely change how we operate, it always has to be contextualized around a trend.
And so as a strategist, I mean, that's our biggest job, right? Is to be aware of everything that's going on, particularly in the space like marketing technology, to understand what are the new interesting things that are coming out and to decide which ones to ignore and which ones actually serve a real purpose. So my background, I was probably either fortunate or unfortunate enough to start my career in the least sexiest part of advertising, which back in the day was direct marketing. Fortunately for me, it stood me in really good stead because I got in the very early days, I guess, of the data revolution. And so if there is one thing that I think is the most interesting thing to look for in any form of marketing technology, it's just anything that enables us to use data in a way that delivers a more personalized experience. And again, I will contextualize that around the fact that that's very specific to what industry you might be in, what your consumers are doing. It looks very differently for a bank or an airline to what it looks like for an FMCG company. So, you know, I don't think the purpose of this call or, you know, this kind of session is obviously to be a bit of a lecture, but I know this question has come through, and I think my encouragement to anybody who's starting out in the industry would be kind of probably coming back to that conversation we're having before around specialists versus generalists, is not to get too caught up in that stuff. Look for the bigger trend. And the bigger trend in this instance for me is around, there's a huge trend around data that has been going on for a very long time. And how do we use information to make better commercial decisions and create ultimately better creative experiences for our consumers, and focus on that. And be conscious of the new technologies that appear and come in and come out, but don't get caught up in them. There's a new shiny object every week. So I wouldn't spend your career or your focus getting too distracted by that. I'd be educated, but not let it kind of take over your world.
Yeah. But I think there's an art to that. And obviously, like you've like grown the skill of that art in terms of what to ignore and how to siphon out what matters and what doesn't. And so that just comes with experience, I would say.
You're absolutely right, Simone. I don't think it is something that you have to learn on the job. I think some people will naturally be better at that just based on the way their brain might work. But it just comes from experience of having seen it all before or seen it in different ways, or just the experience of being able to look at something and instantly know how that can solve a problem or can be applied to something. I think it's when you're looking at something and thinking, this is really interesting, how could we use it? Maybe there isn't a way if you're having to look so hard, if it's not necessarily obvious to begin with, or if it doesn't feel an immediate kind of problem, then it may not actually be there. And I agree. I think that's a skill, you know, you just got to learn that over time. No one's born with that.
Yeah, so true. And Megan, from a media perspective, so, you know, as being a group business director at Zenith, what's your perspective on this, on all of the MarTech evolution that continues?
I think that, sorry, I'm just checking. It's telling me whether I'm unmuted or not. I couldn't say it any more eloquently than Susan just did. It's about working out what your problem is and finding your solution, because it's very easy to be distracted with what might be the latest shiny new toy. It's like, what's your problem? What are you trying to solve? There are a lot of people gathering a lot of data together and not quite sure on why they're doing it or what they're going to do with it. So it's essentially about, you know, what is our true business need? What's our business need going to be into the future? And whatever we take on, is it going to solve that problem?
Well said. I'm going to flip now into a bit of a discussion around creativity and, you know, in today's times in particular with the news saturation in terms of what's happening around COVID, around safety concerns, around job uncertainty. Like, it's actually the biggest challenge we've got as an industry is to stay motivated and creative every day. So I'm going to throw to Zippy, Karen Haywood. She's a head of production prodigious. Zippy, how are you doing it?
I'm unmuted myself. Hello. It sounded on my, you broke up and it sounded like she's a bitch at prodigious. I'm like, oh.
Not at all. Head of production.
Thank you. Look, I liked this question because, but it does have a number of different kind of areas to it. You know, job uncertainty, you know, the idea of news saturation and safety concerns. But first of all, the big one, I think talking about creativity is really important, and you know, and down to what does creativity mean? And for me, it took me a long time to understand what the essence of creativity was. I always kind of just thought creative people were, you know, artists and musicians, and, you know, it was just that traditional arts kind of thing. But there are so many ways to interpret creativity, and I think it's a very personal approach. So, you know, most people wouldn't think that being a producer is necessarily a creative role. You know, you normally associate that with, you know, the director, or, you know, or the copywriters or the art directors. But like, for example, at the moment, I'm being super creative, trying to work out ways to actually continue with production in this age of COVID-19. So, you know, the stuff that I'm trying to think of stuff that I've done for 20 years in different ways, but completely flip it on its head. So, you know, to me, that is the essence of creativity, because it's basically trying to come up with something new that, you know, and reinvent, in some cases, reinvent the wheel. So, you know, so that's kind of, for me, a way that I interpret creativity. And, you know, and then there's the more standard things, like away from work, I love cooking. And I think that's very creative. You know, I love playing the piano, which I haven't done for ages. And if this continues on, I'm going to get good at it again. So it's very exciting. But I think, you know, before we were talking about the imposter syndrome, and I made a little note that I think creativity can probably help in traveling through that valley of darkness, because I think, and I truly believe this, it's through creativity that you can get closer to finding, you know, the parts of you that you're searching for, you're not sure about, you know, which goes back to the old imposter syndrome. And, you know, and with a bit of searching around and exploring in that space, you can find the authenticity and the resilience and the courage that maybe, you know, you're looking for. And this is one of the tools that I use, which is, and I started this a number of years ago, and I ask myself, what is the worst thing that can happen? Now, of course, there's a lot of things that, you know, you really don't want happening, like death or, you know, sickness or being mean to people or whatever it is, but, you know, and anything negative. But it's been such a great mantra for me over many years, because often I'd be almost holding myself back. And I think it's a great tool to then go, what's there to be afraid of? And fear, as we know, you know, really does, or uncertainty really does hold you back. And especially, I think, in these times, that's, you know, we're all on some levels probably fighting that a little bit. We might be brave and courageous, but, you know, what's going on surely affects all of us, you know, on many, many levels. And I think Christine said it earlier, creativity and creative ideas are hard. And I think this is an amazing time for us to expand our tolerance and our comfort levels with creativity, because I think the more that you're then thinking like that, the spark gets lit, and then you just never know where you're going to end up. So I really think that in an odd sort of way, this time could almost be that you know, that time to just actually really explode, you know, your creativity and what you can actually, you know, delve into what you can actually do. Job uncertainty was something that was part of the, you know, the creative, you know, how do we stay creative during this time? And look, I've been very lucky. I've been full-time employed over 30 years with different production companies. But regardless, there've been many ups and downs. And like, I seriously remember about 4 or 5 times over 30 years where I just thought, that's it, that's about it. You know? And there's many ups and downs. So suddenly the phone would ring, and then you're back into it again. So, you know, this one's a doozy. You got to be, you know, it's definitely challenging times. But again, I think I was amazed with how quickly we all kind of, I mean, even tonight, we've adapted. You know, we've been creative as to you know, I had a dinner party with my mum, my dad and stepmom and my sister the other night, which was very interesting. You know, like who would, over Skype. I should have said that. We weren't all together. Over Skype. So, you know, again, we're making some stuff up, and it's amazing. Everyone had a smile on their face. Job uncertainty is certainly one, you know, that's a big one for all of us. And I think the short answer is we don't know. None of us do. But I think the one thing I wanted to note was I've been impressed with the amount of companies that are running online courses or making their software available for free so that people can, you know, like upskill. And I mean, I'm self-taught on anything to do with this computer. So, you know, my Excel skills could really use, you know, some sharpening. My PowerPoint skills are, you know, non-existent. I can turn it on, but that's about it. So, you know, those kind of things, they're basic things. I think probably what's more important is, you know, how we need to think about a way that we can divert our minds from maybe the bigger picture, you know, the stuff that's going on outside, and think about what will engage us and what it is we truly love to do. So yeah, so that's kind of, that's my take on where we're at.
It's really good advice. And I think history actually shows creativity thrives in times like this. Like when you actually look into history and the Spanish flu and, you know, various, I guess, massive health issues, inventions come out of it. And I think your other piece of advice in terms of stepping back and asking yourself as you're decision making, what is the worst thing that could happen? And actually I do this all the time to myself, and I have been for the last probably 15 years, like when I'm decision making. So what is the worst thing that could happen if I make this decision? And then if I can live with the worst thing that could happen, then I go, okay, I can do it then. Exactly. So great advice.
Yeah. Are we going to throw to Jessamy?
Jessamy.
Oh, hi. Look, I agree, and I think it's interesting you were talking about like world events and the Spanish flu and that sort of thing, because you kind of look back at the history of creativity and what creativity is. None of the great inventions of history, except for maybe the simplest thing like rolling a rock down a hill, were invented without looking to the past or looking to something else. So creativity is about finding an idea, combining with an idea from a different field. So it's about, that's what the spark of creativity is. It's about that moment of combination and that moment of finding that new way forward. And the trouble is with the time at the moment with COVID and everything, and I don't know about you guys, but I've become so focused on the news and just following the news and just following one train of thought, one idea. And it's impossible for creativity to happen when you're just following one track. So more than anything at the moment, I would say it's really, really important to make sure that you're making space for other ideas. So you need to find time to give yourself a chance to connect to other people's creativity. So to read widely, to poke around, to play the piano, to do a whole range of different things outside of the news cycle. And then to make sure that you can switch off and get some shower time as well, to just think about combining things, because those are the moments when creativity happens.
Yeah, true. Claire, how are you keeping your creativity thriving during this time?
Oh my gosh. I feel like it's okay. I'm getting little messages from my littles. It's about I've got pens everywhere and just being able to remember stuff and write it down, because there's so many. I don't have a TV, so if I want to read the news, I have to find it, which has, I think, been really helpful. So it's really kind of just letting ideas come into your mind and letting them just kind of roll around, and then writing them the hell down, because I found, like Jessamy was saying, like the shower time is so important, but the shit that comes into your head when you are having a shower, that you're like, oh, this is yeah, of course I'm going to remember this. This is gold, whatever. You know, this is the best idea ever. Like, it doesn't happen to me, but I'm like, oh yeah. No, that never stays in, never. That will never stick. So it's just about writing things down, and it's just kind of awesome, I think, shutting away a lot of the stimulus of going out and whatnot. Like, you are a little bit more in touch with kind of your inner subconscious mind and your conscious mind, and what the hell it's going over and over on, or the little sparks that are kind of popping in. And then, yeah, I've got like an insane garden with my babies and just, I don't know, making messes and whatever, all of that stuff. But,
yeah, I think,
yeah, it's not easy. I
think
totally
the
get it.
unconscious mind, I think listening to the unconscious mind, I think, is really important. And I think this time allows us to do that a little bit more as well. So, yeah, I hold hope that a lot of creativity is going to come out through this time. And, yeah, thank you, Claire.
I was just going to jump back in.
Yeah.
We're wrapping this section up because I've just got a little exercise for everyone. Years ago, I did this 12-week course, and it was designed to explore and develop your creativity. And we did it at my apartment, actually. I hosted it. And so these random people that I kind of knew some of them, didn't know most of them, would come once a week to my house for 12 weeks. And each week you had these different exercises to do. And of course, you know, some of them were easy and some of them were terrifying because you kind of had to share with everybody. And that can be a little bit confronting. So I remember this one particularly threw me, but I'm not going to make you do the thing where we all come back and share. But I remember thinking how helpful it was, and it might just be a little spark for everyone. And especially where it might just also be something positive in our minds. So you had to write down 50 things that you liked about yourself. 50. And like Maya, so you like, you're proud of, whatever. And I remember thinking that first 10 to 15 things that I liked about myself were literally like pulling teeth, because you're like, oh, I can't write that down, you know, blah, blah, blah. After about 25, you couldn't stop me, you know. So, and then you ended up with this amazing list of all these random things that your brain told yourself that, you know, you do like about yourself. And I just thought that might be a little springboard for everyone just to give it a go, you know, put it somewhere safe, have a little look at it. It might make you laugh. It might actually just be a little, like I say, a springboard to just start a conversation with yourself.
I think it's a great idea that will kind of probably lead us to thinking about, you know, where we can direct our, you know, some of our time and expand ourselves. It goes back to our +1+1+1, like keep expanding ourselves and challenging ourselves. I've got 2 more questions, and then we're going to go into the open mic questions, so all the Q&As that are coming through. This question is actually around how do we think the industry is changing, and what do you hope will be the positive change that does come out of COVID-19? And I'd like to throw to Caroline first to answer this one.
Question of the hour. Obviously, we're all going through some uncertain times, but I think that the greatest thing that's going to come out of this is the fact that people are, because they haven't chosen this change, they've been forced to adapt to this. And I've always had the belief that you need to embrace change, but that's always been a personal mantra. And now I see clients that have never embraced change. And I'm sure you have some of these clients that say, but we've always done it this way. And then when you challenge their thinking, you can't get them to move on. But in the COVID times, they can't say that. No one has ever been here before. So for me, it's opening everyone's horizons on seeing things differently. And yes, some of our budgets may suffer at the moment, but I feel that what's going to come out on the other side is hugely, hugely positive. It's just, we're all building resilience, but our clients are also building resilience. And we're already seeing huge transformation in the business models of current clients. We have clients that we would have imagined would be very slow that have become suddenly very fast and very reactive. So I think that's going to be the biggest takeaway. When people say, oh, advertising is dead, it has slowed down, but research says that people still want to see their favorite brands advertised. They just don't want to be sold to at the moment. But the brands that continue investing right now are the brands that are going to end up being stronger on the other side of COVID. Those that don't stay true to their authentic core, maybe people will become disloyal to them at the end of this. But I feel this is the most exciting time of my career. One day we will all be old and sitting in rocking chairs and tell our grandchildren and our colleagues in the nursing homes about how we got through COVID and that we were working in advertising and production and strategy. But I think that it's going to be hugely positive. And for me, the key thing though, as a leader and as a manager, is keeping that positive mindset in people, because they've compared this crisis to the cycle of grief. And if you've ever grieved for anything, people don't go through grief the same way. Some people are still stuck in denial. Some people are angry. Some people are in the depressed phase. Someone like me, I go very quickly through the acceptance phase because I can see the positive on the other side. But we just need to be sensitive as leaders that we're not all the same and that we're not all coming to terms the same way. And it's the same thing for our clients. So it's being that gentle coach and trusted advisor and bringing them on that journey to see what are the possibilities now during the COVID, but also how can we build the future for the post-COVID, which is probably still a few months away.
Yeah, everyone is in a different stage of the journey, I find, in my life, like whether it's personal or whether it's from a work sense or whether it's from a client sense. And it's being, it's understanding that and it's having empathy for that, and then trying to, I guess, the journey. Sarah Kelly, do you have a perspective on this? Like, what do you hope will be the positive change that comes out of COVID-19?
Simone, that's such a big question, isn't it? But I do really agree with so much that has been said. I feel like I've got nothing to add. I've learned so much from you. So thank you so much for, that really candid that we've all heard tonight. Look, I think I'm aligned there as Caroline. I'm an optimist, and I think that's absolutely a leadership quality that is needed more than ever in times of economic downturn, which there's no question we're heading into. But I think as marketers and advertisers, it's a super exciting time. I think because we can learn to stick to the thing that we're so good at, that we've heard all about tonight, like powerful resonates, being creative and agile. These things, qualities that will adapt to the post-COVID, the new business models that we're experiencing as well as our clients. I actually work across sport, tourism and education as well as the not-for-profit sector. And I can speak from experience, these sectors have been incredibly adversely impacted and decimated, in fact, at the moment by this. And yet there's still optimism. And it is all at the heart of it, in my view, marketing problems that need solving now and will need solving for the recovery COVID. And that is where that storytelling and that creativity, admittedly, that will need to be efficiently delivered, so best leveraging resources in a really innovative way, that will really solve those problems and I think retain clients, retain customers, things like acquisition. So I think that's a really important point. In terms of things like digital marketing and advertising, obviously there's huge opportunity there. So I think that's really, really exciting to see because of the efficiency of the delivery, because of the ability. I guess something we all do well as humans is scale flexibly and collaboratively. And that's something we're seeing certainly now in the crisis response, but certainly what we'll see in the rebuild and how we all interact, communicate, consume, and do business. And it's something I think we all need to lead and leverage as optimistic in this. So I think that's a really important point. The other one is that I probably haven't heard enough tonight about in terms of leadership, and obviously that's a really important point in being able to pivot and respond to this crisis post-recovery, and seize these opportunities that Caroline spoke so well about then. And would be vulnerability and the ability to actually disclose that. And I think that comes back to what Nicole and everyone, we've all talked about that imposter syndrome, but it's okay to talk about that. It's okay that you're worried or that you're not sure what to have no solutions, and it's okay to have perspective on that as well. And I guess I think I am almost in that rocking chair, by the way. I've got 4 uni students in the household who are driving me absolutely nuts. I'm going to whisper, but it's, you know, you get perspective, don't you, through all of these sorts of, and we all deal with them, the curveballs, throughout our working lives and our personal lives. One that's come for me personally this week is one of my best friend's sons was the young man killed on the Great Barrier Reef by a shark yesterday. And, you know, that is really tough for them to deal with, particularly during this crisis. My kids right now, because they're not lifting around, this will turn out after this, because there is so much opportunity, there's so much to be excited about, and it's really exciting as creative people, which I think solve under ambiguity, under pressure, that we're all under resources, and frugally innovate. I think that's going to be the key. So look, I'm optimistic, I'm excited, but I think it's also important to admit when times are tough and talk to each other, relate to each other, which is so much about what this program is about from what I understand, and why I'm really excited about being involved, because, you know, supporting each other, whether you're a mentee or a mentor, and I must admit in any mentoring I've ever been involved in, if I've been the mentor, I've actually felt like the mentee because I've learnt so much. So I think that's something, it's absolutely a partnership here, mentees and mentors. And I think Nicole Hartley, who's here, and she's a terrific, I have the pleasure of working with at UQ, would say the same thing, that when we teach and, you know, mentor, I suppose, students, so to speak, it's absolutely a two-way exchange where we both learn a lot and develop as people out of that exchange. So, you know, well done, Lynn and Simone and Paulina for pulling this together. It's really exciting, and another reason I'm optimistic about post-COVID.
Thank you.
We've got so much to look forward to.
Thank you, Sarah.
And I'm the only one that seems to have had my glass. So
you've brought great perspective into the conversation, in particular about the Great Barrier Reef tragedy, and your sharing around vulnerability and the importance to disclose and share. And my experiences with this whole program, that's what it's all about. It's about having that one-on-one relationship with someone and being vulnerable, whether you're the mentor or the mentee. So I mean, one of my, I think, inspirations is Brené Brown. Like, I honestly believe in being vulnerable in everything that you do, in terms of life, and whether that's work or personal. So thank you for that, Sarah. I think we might have a couple of other people who have a perspective on this as well. I think Kelly Brightwell.
Hi.
Kelly, would you like to chime in on this?
So I guess I just wanted to chime in, and it's a really local perspective, this particular one. And I guess we've probably, a lot of us who've been in the industry for a while have experienced this, and it's the perception that all the talent lives in Sydney, and that the careers are in Sydney or in Melbourne. And time again, I've either lost agency colleagues, I've been made redundant on my whole team's been moved to Sydney when I was in at Virgin Australia. And it was one of those things that's really sat kind of at the back of my mind for years, going, I don't understand why, from a geographic perspective, if we can get technology like Zoom to be able to conference call, why we need to be based in a particular city. The best talent is the best talent, the best ideas are the best ideas. And the thing that I kind of, if there's a silver lining of COVID, is that we are all on a level playing field, and I'm so thrilled for all of the amazing marketers that live in what my boss was once calling the rural outpost of Brisbane, to be able to come up with our great ideas and show our goods now, like really show what we're made of, and show that Queensland is actually the capital of amazing creative. It's got some fabulous marketers. It's got some amazing teams that work in crisis comms, in in advertising. We really need to pull our socks up, show what we can do, and show that we can do it from anywhere. And I'm really looking forward to what that means for our careers in the future, because I don't think that where you want to live now is going to be such a thorn in your side the way it has been maybe in the past.
Completely. Love it. I've got one final question before we go to open mic, and it's for Priscilla. Priscilla, why did you get involved last year? I think this is your second year with the Assisterhood program. And why is it important to you, and why should people apply?
Well, firstly, I think, Simone, you spoke about it earlier about, I think probably when we were growing up in this industry, it was very male dominated, and they were kind of grumpy old men to each other, and there wasn't a lot of sharing, there wasn't a lot of supporting. But I think, you know, with you coming in and Jane Young and so on, we really saw this element of a lot more shared support for each other. I know if I ever went down in a pitch, I would be the first person to send an email or, you know, pick up the phone and say congratulations, you know, to whoever was the victor, because life's too short. And, you know, there's just no room for that. And I love where our industry has gone. I love this sort of level of support that we all have for each other. And I know a lot of the women, you know, on this panel, and they're freaking amazing. And why wouldn't you have, I want all of you as my mentors. So that's why people should get involved. But I think, you know, we need to be the change that we want to see, right? That old saying. And if we want to see this level of support grow and continue and to move and reshape, you know, our industry and our category, then, you know, we need to be, that's why this program is so important. And that's why I really wanted to be involved. Additionally, I have a 4-year-old daughter, and I really firmly believe that what we do now will be rewarded later. And, you know, if she comes up into the industry and says, crap, mum, you know, I'm facing this, or whatever, why didn't you do something? You know, she would have every right to be shitty, because what we can do now can literally start changing things and reshaping things, you know, next year, you know, immediately, straight away. So I sort of thought, God, do I feel like was my motivation a maternal responsibility? But I actually think it's just a human and professional responsibility to open up doors and to share our vulnerability and our shit ton of mistakes, and, you know, be able to, you know, share that with a mentee, and to be really open and raw. And why wouldn't we want to do that? You know, it'd be crazy not to. And I think all of us as women, you know, are here for that reason, because we do want to share and we want to give something back, and we want to, you know, stop people perhaps making all the crazy mistakes that we did. Who knows? But I think in terms from the mentee perspective, you have nothing to lose and absolutely everything to gain. And, you know, that could be a lifelong relationship with somebody, you know, that you've seen here tonight that you think, wow, you know, they are my disco ball, or, you know, whatever it is. So, you know, it's, if you could, and there's a cost element to this, right? Like I've had a professional coach, they cost a ton of cash. And, you know, if you're talking, say, I just had a little look before I jumped on the call, a professional executive coach is like $400 plus an hour. So if you're having one session a month, say, for example, multiply that across the year, you're getting almost $5,000 worth of like free guidance and coaching. You know, like, who's going to throw that professional career advancing, you know, amount into your bank account? And this is for free. It's just, you'd be mad not to do it. So, and I had a brilliant experience. I'm back again. I love Kate Hemsley Hackett, Lynn and Paulina. We've got such immense talent coming through. I think our industry's in great hands, particularly if Assisterhood is as cracking as it was last year and beyond.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, Vicky, have you got some perspective to add?
Well, if you, yeah, I do. If you think about all the things that have been said tonight, one is, you know, get involved, challenge yourself. make connections, build your network, all of these things that we've been talking about. That's what Assisterhood can offer you as well. And as a personal thing for me, I've absolutely loved what I've done for my career. And I just want to be able to share that and let other people love what I do, and help them along the way to do that. It's a sharing of knowledge and understanding, and go for it, girls. You've got an amazing group of women here that have got so much knowledge to give. I think it's a wonderful thing, a wonderful resource for you.
Okay, thank you. I think we're going to throw to the open mic questions now. So I think the first one is from Brooke. And Brooke,
if I interrupt you actually and go a little bit rogue, because
Go
I'd like
for it.
to pose some questions back to you, or give you the opportunity to answer some questions as well. So if it's all right with everyone else, I'll ask the questions and then you can potentially answer some questions.
Sure. There's no, this is a surprise, Lynn.
I did try to throw it your way as a quick question. So, but I will throw the first one your way. So from Brooke, Brooke says, I want to constantly grow in my career, and as many people do, I'm sure, which involves continuous education. Sometimes I don't know where to find places to self-educate, or even what new skills I should be learning. Do you have any tips in this space?
The way that I've always done it is I've always tried to work out what I want to know more of, and then I seek out someone who I think is in that space, and then I either stick to them, I find a way to stick to them, or I ask them, I guess, what sort of education, what sort of courses are around to help me.
No worries. I can see that Susan's also jumped in really quickly. Susan, I might throw to you.
Yeah, so I think one of the things I would just encourage people to do, and I think it's come up as a theme that quite a few people have said tonight actually, is don't always also look for formal training and think that that's the only way to grow your career or to grow your knowledge. I would hope that one of the themes everyone has picked up today is that most of us at some point in our career did something quite different that may not necessarily have gone on a straight path. So whilst I think it is always really good to be, looking for new things to learn and trying to upskill yourself, I would never try and discourage from anyone from doing that. The other thing I would say is don't try and throw away the opportunity that's right in front of you. And so before you go looking for, if you're in one job and you're looking for other skill sets and what training could you be doing or what learning kind of over here, I would just kind of ask, first of all, are you maximizing the job you're in right now? Could you be doing a little bit more in the thing that you're doing to just, draw all the real benefits out of that? Because I think sometimes that is overlooked for people thinking they've got to, pick up, learn how to code or, learn the latest in Adobe or whatever the hell it might be. Those are really interesting things, but don't miss the opportunity that's generally right in front of you at the time.
It's really good advice. Do you want to jump to question number 2, Lynn?
Yes. Second question, how do you know who is the right mentor? This is a really tricky question because I think we have such a range of mentors this year, and it's one of those old psychology tricks that the more choice that you have, the more indecision it creates. So I think it's actually a pretty good question to ask. So I'm actually going to throw to Carolyn first.
It's such a good question. I'm going to come back to the comfort zone because people tend to choose their mentors based on who they feel they get along with or someone that they have this natural connection to. But I feel that the best mentors that I've had were very, very, very different from me. I'm obviously an extrovert. I'm expressive in the spoken language, and the people I've learned with the most were my polar opposites, introverts, process-oriented people. So I think that you also have to question yourself in your comfort zone. You need someone that you'll feel comfortable with and that you can expose your vulnerabilities, but you also need to pick someone that you feel is still a bit different than what you are like so that they can push you and so that you can challenge yourself. The other thing is, and I believe Christine and other people mentioned intuition, it's sometimes you have no idea why, you like something that Vicky said or Susan said or Sarah Kelly said, and there's just something in what they answered that really appeals to you and it's something you want to explore. So just listen to your gut as well. And I always believe that, you know, there's two ways of deciding things, with your mind and with your heart. And you can list both of them down, but I always feel that you have to be led by your heart.
Just adding on to that as well, guys, I think the heart and the head is really important, and sometimes you don't actually get paired with mentors, like, you know, the setting that we have here. Sometimes they just grow on you too, I've noticed. I've had a few leaders back in, you know, throughout my career that have actually really made an impact, and you just kind of grow into a role of mentor mentee without knowing it. You know, after 2 years you didn't actually have a really good mentor on your hands. So it's a hard question to answer, but I guess it's all about, you know, that connection and also the challenge. I can't say, like, Caroline's completely right in the sense that don't get comfortable. Make sure that people challenge you.
Thanks, Alex. We're going to go, does anyone else have anything to add to that one? Otherwise, I'll jump to question 3. So question 3, has anyone in the panel taken time away from their career in advertising to go see the world or try something new? And what were your learnings? I know that Jess actually answered this one in the chat. So Jess, I might throw to you first, if that's all right.
Well, I had an interesting time when I first finished uni. I came out with a marketing degree. I tried getting marketing jobs. It was 2008, so maybe like you guys now who are just trying to get started in the industry at a difficult time. 2008, global financial crisis, not many jobs around for a young marketer looking to cut their teeth. I took a couple of small roles, like in kind of dodgy places, and I was trying my best, and I was so frustrated, and so I decided to just change up what I was doing completely. And so I applied to work for Princess Cruises, and I went and worked as a assistant cruise director for them for 18 months. So I did 3 contracts. I got to do a world cruise. I got to do a lot of sailing around the Mediterranean, hosting game shows, karaoke, trivia, all that sort of stuff, and just got to do something completely different. And interesting to be have worked on the Ruby Princess, given the news, it's being in the news right now. So I definitely feel for the crew that are on that ship at this moment. But it was amazing because I went away, and while I was away, I kind of had a chance to think, okay, what do I want to do with my life? How do I want to be in marketing, or actually, is it advertising that I really, really want to pursue? And so, you know, when I came back off the ship, I went straight into starting a master's in creative advertising, and then I went straight into award school. But I needed that space away to get the clarity to kind of say, okay, hey, this is what I want to do, and I'm going to go for it.
I really echo those sentiments. I've had 3 deliberate career breaks, and 2 of them, two runs of maternity leave, and one time where, you know, kind of similar to that experience, I took, you know, 9 months off, and I went and worked a snow season and became a snowboard instructor. And like Jessamy said, every single time I've kind of come back from that experience, you know, working kind of in the snow, in the cold, earning no money, and not being valued for what you do, and just come back so focused and so determined to continue working in kind of a creative industry, and really clear on what my next step was. And it gives you the space to kind of step away from those daily frustrations where you're like, oh, this is so terrible and frustrating. You're like, actually, you know what? This is the best job in the world. This is the greatest industry, and I really want to focus on this thing as the next step. And, you know, come back, and I've done the same thing, you know, new study and new kind of task, and you're just so fresh and so keen. I really wish everyone could have the opportunity to take a good break, because it's such a benefit to your career.
Thanks, Erin. I might throw it to Sil really quickly here. Seems to be a really popular question with the mentors now, which is great. There's three of them lined up to answer this. So Sil, first to you.
Sil, we can't hear you.
While we work through, oh, so can we try again? No, nothing. Well, in the interim, I might throw to Megan really quickly. Sorry, Sil.
I'm gonna show my age here, but I was doing absolutely massive hours. I had started out in various places and ended up at an advertising agency and thought I absolutely love this media agency, and I was doing absolutely massive huge hours, and my boss used to say to me, I love you because you'll never say no, like whatever I give you, you'll never say no. And then finally when it came that I had a baby, I had a different MD by then, and they suddenly turned around and said, yeah, part-time, what are you talking about part-time? You can't do that. And I'm looking going, but I've got, I can't do 12 and 14 hour days anymore and still go home to this baby. So I just suddenly had this period of grief where I resigned from my job and went, okay, well, this is it. And I walked away from it. I moved to Queensland, and an old boss of mine made contact with me and said, hey, I've heard you're in Queensland now. I'm in Queensland now. Do you want to work? And I went, oh, yeah, but I said, but work doesn't want me anymore. And she went, no, that's ridiculous. And I took some time and I said, okay, but don't let me talk to clients. And I had this paranoia that that clients wouldn't want me unless I was full time. And it was just so funny. Just again, that same thing, that being away from it, I went, actually, I really do love this job, and I love this focus on thinking about business problems and how customers react to them. And then I had this terrible, again, imposter syndrome, thinking, oh, everybody else is going to be so much further along. And I'd had a whole 3 years gap, I think, by this stage. No, 18 months. And I thought the world had moved on and everything, all the cool kids were running town. And it wasn't. It was just that, the world was still fundamentally the same. We just had, new problems every day. So, yeah.
Thanks, Megan. I'm going to throw to our friend Paulina, who is in the background, to ask the next question.
Hello. Let me see if I can spotlight myself, and it doesn't seem like I can. So I'm just going to try my best anyways. Actually very cue, Megan, on that imposter syndrome that's clearly coming up a few times today. So it's definitely resonating with everyone. So another question from the crowd is, how do you actually know if you're doing a good job and you're good at what you do, which I feel is a very good question. And I'll first throw that at Sarah Jane.
Yes, this is a good question from the audience, because I think this is perhaps one question that perhaps you shouldn't be asking yourself. When you were little, when you were a child, when you're learning to walk, and you kept falling over every time you got up, did you stop and say, maybe I'm not so good at walking, maybe I should just crawl around for the rest of my life? We've all gone through that, and now we're all fantastic at walking. And you find the same thing, that as you do something every day, naturally in maybe months or years' time, you look back and there comes a point where you just know that you're good at something. And asking yourself that question, am I good enough? I don't think that's a good question to be asking yourself. And to counteract that, what you need to do is 4 things. You need to focus. So if you find yourself asking that question, am I good enough? Am I good at this? Or should I really be doing this? Just focus. What do I need to do next? What's the next job on my list? Focus on that, get it done. Next, belief. You need to believe in yourself and take it in small steps. Maybe you don't have to believe that you're good at what you do, but maybe you can believe that you can get that next task done. And if you can't believe in yourself to get that next small little task done, what's missing? Maybe it's education. If there's something that you're missing, go and find that missing piece of the puzzle. Read online, read an article, go and hunt down someone who knows, educate yourself on how to do it. And then that's how you become good at any particular skill or task is by educating yourself. And the fourth thing you need to do is just dedicate yourself. Just decide that that's what you're going to do. Go and do it and follow those three other things. Focus on doing it. Believe that you can do it. Educate yourself in doing it and dedicate yourself to get it done. And if you just keep doing that over and over again, then I guarantee you that at some point you'll turn around and you'll say, oh, yeah, I am good at this.
I think that's really awesome advice. I think we very often forget to, really break things down and make them a step-by-step process and just keep going through those cycles to really build up that courage and build up that that confidence that doesn't necessarily have to come from other people. So that's really awesome. So I believe Georgia wanted to chime in on that one.
Thanks, Paulina. Yeah, I think it's so true. I think so much of this is just practice and getting better and better and more confident. But I think the reference we had earlier, when you think about that sort of graph we're looking at where we've got confidence and experience over time, you realize that with experience, the more you know, the more you realize you still have left to learn, the more you don't know, if that makes sense. So, when that's the case, it's kind of natural that then you start getting that imposter syndrome. And it's actually, if anything, I think a positive sign. If everyone's on a trajectory where there's always something left to learn, I think everyone here that's on the panel feels like we could still benefit from mentors. We don't see that we're at an end destination. I definitely don't feel like that. I think you've got to constantly be hungry and, and keep learning. I think though, so part of it to me is accepting that everyone kind of is in the same boat. You're kind of not special in feeling like that. It's kind of just normal. And it's probably a positive sign that you've got some good emotional intelligence and self-awareness. The other thing though, I think you can always look at data. You can always look at feedback areas. You can sort of, if you've got areas that you are looking to skill up in or develop in, ask sort of someone that's trusted for some constructive feedback, or sort of if it's client work, I think sometimes there is sort of positive feedback that's coming to us, but we're conditioned to disregard it or ignore it. So, I guess listen to the feedback that you're actually getting, and sort of, I think we could all do a bit better at just sort of reaffirming that we're doing a good job and that we're going to be all right and that we're on a learning, that it's okay to fail and it's okay to learn, and we'll all sort of just keep going, I guess, on that trajectory.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm getting, obviously a lot of people wanted to chime in as well, which is great. Nicole Hartley would be the next one.
Thanks, Paulina. Yeah, I think in a lot of ways I'm kind of summarizing a few things that other people have said, and I just love that we're all on the same sort of plane or sort of understanding here. I think feedback is really critical to hear. And it's not just to go and go, I need critical feedback. It's actually just being curious about what people think and, whether, it's resonating with them. If you're curious about understanding the world around you, it becomes natural for you to seek feedback and to seek understanding. And I think that really enables you to see whether, what you're doing is resonating, whether you're actually hitting the mark. And feedback's critically important for you to gain confidence and for you to, grow. I think when I think about the students that I've taught or the people that I just know in my life that I kind of, want to support and help and kind of stand out to me, they're the people that have come to me and said, oh, hey, what do you think about that? They've actually stepped up and asked, and it's as a mentor or as someone else, you always love actually being able to give your opinion, your advice. And it starts a dialogue that takes you in places, and you see different opinions. And you'll realize, you can kind of take your little gems out of it. I think you just need to be eager and hungry for feedback and for advice from others. And yes, it's great to get it from that trusted friend. That's perfectly fine. And that's great, particularly when you've got a pitch or something to do and you're kind of going, oh my God, am I landing this? Am I kind of saying the right thing? Is the message getting across? But when you want to grow and extend yourself, again, it's speaking to what other people were saying before, it's about also getting that feedback and advice from people that kind of stretch your boundaries, and whether you think they're smarter than you, or they think they've had more experience, or just they think about things completely differently. And all of that feedback together will just make you a more well-rounded person and give you kind of that more global look at how you actually engage more holistically.
That's great. Thank you so much, Nicole. We might move on to the next one, which is a bit of a lengthy one, so bear with me with my lovely Russian accent. So this lovely person from the audience is saying that she's an all-rounder and combining copywriting, account management, and graphic design, which does definitely seem like a lot. And also with experience both client side and agency side. And now she's a marketing manager on the client side. And sometimes, you know, we all get overwhelmed with the workload and so many elements of the roles and combining multiple roles in one. So I guess we're seeking for some advice on strategies of how we can stay on top of our daily tasks, which I know is a very juicy and good question for all of us. And I actually might just throw that back at Simone very quickly.
Yeah, I've got one thing to add here, and because I think over my career, I have been a little bit of a perfectionist, and I've had to, I guess, try and moderate that over time. And it was actually a creative director who said it to me, and it was in a cab. I can remember it distinctly on my way to a meeting, and I was, you know, absolutely full of anxiety because I didn't have like the prep that I needed to have, because the creative concepts had kind of landed in my lap from him like 1 minute before getting in the cab, and so that didn't really suit my perfectionist, you know, mindset at the time. Anyway, he turned to me and he said to me, I need you to be calm. And he said, what I need you to take forward in life is to do one thing and to do it well. And that really had no relation to the situation I was in at that time, which is often, you know, creative people throw you different things. And he was probably just trying to divert my anxiety. But that piece of advice has carried through to me every day since that day. And when I feel overwhelmed, I look at the things that I've got on my day, and I go, what is going to make the biggest impact? And then what am I going to do next, and how well am I going to do it? And then I'll move to the next thing. So that's my advice.
I'm a traditional user of the list, and I write my lists out every day, and I'm a ticker offer of it as I go through, and you know, continually to prioritize things as they come in. And it's just taking that breath, making sure that what you've got on there, and that what everyone's throwing at you make sure that you're prioritizing the right things at the right time, because you do get a lot of stuff thrown at you. It's then finding out, is that really more important than this one and that one and that one, and then setting yourself a task list and pushing back if you have to push back and have a conversation that you're not going to get through it. Have that conversation and be honest and upfront, and ask for help if you need to ask for help. Don't try and just, you know, pedal and not think there's people out there that can help you manage your time and help you prioritize your time as well, because, you know, that's very important. And the daily to-do list is one of the first things I start all my new team on, is what have you got to do today? How do you learn to prioritize it? Who do you need to speak to about certain things? And you just move on step by step, day by day.
And I think, Vicky, to add to that is do it at the end of the day, because it clears your brain, and then you can go home so that you can switch off from the work day and get to home life, as much as it's a bit challenging now. But then it's not sitting in your brain, it's on paper or it's on your computer, and you can leave it there. And I guess probably to add that, it's like, you know, we talk a lot about prioritizing, and I think we work in an industry of high achievers. So, you know, I wrote down a couple of things in response to this: is prioritize not only what's important, but where you can add the most value. If you can, delegate, and if you can, say no. And, you know, if you're in a position to talk to your manager or your superior, do, because we're really good at coping in this industry and just getting it done and not saying anything. And so people may not realize that you're struggling with your workload. So if you have the opportunity to have that conversation, do, because at least then you're enrolling somebody else in, you know, your workload. Like, I know that unless it's an issue for me or I'm not picking up on warning signals, if people are performing and doing well, I'm not going to notice that they might be overwhelmed, because we do a really good job at hiding it. And I put down pragmatically too, write lists is the thing that for me, that gets me through every day. But I also read this really interesting article that talked about deep work and shallow work, and the need, particularly if you're doing something like graphic design and writing, which is creative, and then you're doing account management, and they're two sides of the brain. And so they talked about actually setting timers and going into a place where there are no interruptions for your deep work, which is your thinking work, and then set aside other time to like answer emails and not be on your emails all day if you can, to actually set aside time for answering them and controlling your space, which is really hard to do sometimes, but it's just separating those sides of the brain and the element of work that you need to do, so that when you need to do that deep creative work, you've got that clear space to do it, because interruptions just kill the creativity. And I think and also taking breaks. I read that walking stimulates creativity. So even during the times when we're locked away at home, just going for a 15-minute walk can actually start thinking. And I spoke to some of my creative teams about it, and they said they often go for a walk as a team, or go and play table tennis or do something. And, you know, people can go, oh, they're just dicking around, but that's actually how they ideate. So you need to find sort of almost like your success strategy for, particularly if you're working across both those realms, for both elements. But I do concur with Vicky that lists are your savior.
That's a really great answer, Christine. I think that's really come to fruition for me, definitely now that I'm working from home. I've really started noticing that, for me, I always have my emails and everything open. So I'm getting all these notifications all day long, and I'm realizing I'm not getting any of the sort of deep thinking work, like you mentioned, done, because I keep procrastinating to the side because I'm addressing the next email that comes through. So I've really had to change my way of thinking and invest in some noise cancelling headphones and turn all my notifications off. So I think once you put a name to something and identify it, I think it's really important to, I think it's the first step to sort of moving towards change. So that's really good advice. Thank you.
Lynn, I'm just going to jump in and say that my dog has come up with some of the best solutions to my most challenging problems. They're things that I don't solve in the shower, I solve with my dog, and she's a very good listener.
That's really, really good advice. Really good advice.
Yeah, tell your dog. She listens.
Well, honestly, guys, I could listen to this all night long, and I can imagine the audience would feel very much the same. So I guess for me, it's going to be a wrap for tonight, but thank you so much for tuning in. This has been really great, really inspiring. I know that I've learned so much and taken on a lot of advice. So we'll post a recording of this on the Assisterhood website in the coming days. So you can rewatch this and relive all the amazing moments and relearn everything again. And I just want to touch on applications for our mentorships are actually now open should you want to be mentored by one of these amazing ladies here tonight. And they close on April the 17th. So you've got a few more days to get your entries in. Each mentor will then have the challenging task of choosing just one mentee for the program this year, and successful mentees will be notified by the end of the month. So head over to our website and find out more about all our amazing mentors and apply. If you're not also following us on our social pages at the moment, we're on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And if you have any questions at all, slide into our DMs, and myself, Paulina, Claire, and Kate will be on the receiving end of those questions. That's it for me tonight. Thank you so much for everyone to making the time this evening to come along. And that's it for now. So we'll say goodbye and we'll speak to you soon. I think it's wine time, definitely 1 o'clock. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.